The fourth and final set of findings and conclusions concern how the interrogations of CIA detainees were absolutely brutal, far worse than the CIA represented them to policymakers and others. Beginning with the first detainee, Abu Zubaydah, and continuing with numerous others, the CIA applied its so-called enhanced interrogation techniques in combination and in near-stop fashion for days and even weeks at a time on one detainee. In contrast to CIA representations, detainees were subjected to the most aggressive techniques immediately, stripped naked, diapered, physically struck, and put in various painful stress positions for long periods of time. They were deprived of sleep for days, in one case up to 180 hours. That's 7.5 days over a week with no sleep, usually standing or in stress positions, at times with their hands tied together over their heads, chained to the ceiling. In the Cobalt facility I previously mentioned, interrogators and guards used what they called rough takedowns, in which a detainee was grabbed from his cell, clothes cut off, hooded, and dragged up and down a dirt hallway while being slapped and punched. The CIA led several detainees to believe they would never be allowed to leave CIA custody alive, suggesting to Abu Zubaydah that he would only leave in a coffin-shaped box. That's a CIA cable from August 12, 2002.
Security Advisory Committee and for other purposes.
Throughout this video, we will be talking about the CIA malfeasance and criminality in their use of the Rendition program, which led to the enhanced interrogation techniques on detainees, which were described as torture by the Senate Select Committee. But in order to go forwards, we have to go backwards and learn about what led to the torture memos, interrogation programs, and renditions. And throughout this video, I will be reading from a number of articles, documents, and files, in which some I will provide below for you to view. And to understand how the CIA began employing the use of torture, I will be talking about the U.S. Army and CIA interrogation manuals. And the CIA interrogation manuals are 7 controversial military training manuals, which were declassified by the Pentagon in 1996. In 1997, 2 additional CIA manuals were declassified in response to a FOIA request, which is a Freedom of Information Act request, filed by the Baltimore Sun, which is the largest circulation daily newspaper in Maryland. The manuals in question have been referred to by various media sources as torture manuals. The CIA manuals, the very first manual is the Kubarek counterintelligence interrogation, which was dated July 1963. It is the source of much of the material in the second manual. Kubarek was a U.S. Central Intelligence Agency cryptonym for the CIA itself. The cryptonym Kubarek appears in the title of a 1963 document, Kubarek Counterintelligence Interrogation, which describes interrogation techniques, including, among other things, coercive counterintelligence interrogation of resistance sources. This is the oldest manual and describes the use of abusive techniques as exemplified by 2 references to the use of electric shock, in addition to the use of threats of fear, sensory deprivation, and isolation. The second manual is the Human Resource Exploitation Training Manual, 1983. It was used in at least 7 U.S. training courses conducted in Latin American countries, including Honduras, between the years 1982 and 1987. According to a declassified 1989 report prepared by the Senate Intelligence Committee, the 1983 manual was developed from notes of a CIA interrogation course in Honduras. Both manuals deal exclusively with interrogation. Both manuals have an entire chapter devoted to coercive techniques. These manuals recommend arresting suspects early in the morning by surprise, blindfolding them, and stripping them naked. Suspects should be held incommunicato and should be deprived of any kind of informal routine in eating and sleeping. Interrogation rooms should be windowless, soundproof, dark, without toilets. The manuals advise that torture techniques can backfire, that the threat of pain is often more effective than pain itself. The manuals describe coercive techniques to be used to induce psychological regression in the subject by bringing a superior outside force to bear on his will to resist. These techniques include prolonged, consistent constraint, prolonged exertion, extremes heat, cold, or moisture, deprivation of food or sleep, disrupting routines, solitary confinement, threats of pain, deprivation of sensory stimuli, hypnosis, and the use of placebos. Between 1984 and 1985, after congressional committees began questioning training techniques being used by the CIA in Latin America, the 1983 manual went through substantial revision. And in 1985, a page advising against using coercive techniques was inserted at the front of Human Resource Exploitation Training Manual. Handwritten changes were also introduced haphazardly into the text. For example, while we do not stress the use of coercive techniques, we do want to make you aware of them and the proper way to use them has been altered to, while we deplore the use of coercive techniques, we do want you to make you aware of them so that you may avoid them. But the entire chapter on coercive techniques is still provided with some items crossed out. The two manuals were completely declassified and released to the public in May of 2004 and now available online, in which I will make one of them available to you in the description. These methods in regards to torture have been echoed or fast forwarded to the 20 years. After the events of September 11, 2001, a set of legal memoranda known as the torture memos was drafted by John Yoo, the Deputy Assistant Attorney General of the United States, and was signed in August of 2002 by Assistant Attorney General J.S. Bybee, head of the Office of Legal Counsel of the United States Department of Justice. They advised the Central Intelligence Agency, the United States Department of Defense, and the President on the use of enhanced interrogation techniques, mental and physical torment, and coercion, such as prolonged sleep deprivation, binding in stress positions, and waterboarding, and stated that such acts, widely regarded as torture, might be legally permissible under an expansive interpretation of presidential authority during the War on Terror. In May of 2005, the CIA requested new legal opinions about the interrogation techniques it was using. The Office of Legal Counsel issued 3 memos that month, signed by Stephen G. Bradbury, the Attorney General, ruling on the legality of the authorized techniques if agents followed certain constraints. In addition to these memos issued by the Office of Legal Counsel to executive agencies, internal memos were written related to the use of torture in interrogation of detainees. For instance, in 2002 and 2003, Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld signed several memos authorizing special interrogation plans for specific detainees held at Guantanamo Bay in an attempt to gain more information from them. All of these memorandums have been the focus of considerable controversy over executive power, government practices, and the treatment of detainees during the Bush administration. The orders were rescinded by then President Barack Obama on January 22nd, 2008, shortly after he took office. One of the few bright spots of that administration. The term torture memos were originally used to refer to 3 documents prepared by the Office of Legal Counsel at the United States Department of Justice and signed by Bybee in August of 2002. In 2005, Alberto Gonzales, the former U.S. Attorney General under Bush, testified before Congress that the CIA sought the 2002 opinion after having captured Abu Zubaydah in 2002, who was then believed to be a significant al-Qaeda figure who could provide important information to U.S. efforts to constrain and prevent terrorism. Much later, the CIA would admit to Abu Zubaydah and his lawyers that not only was he an important player, he wasn't even involved with al-Qaeda. However, they were anxious to get as much information from Zubaydah as fast as possible. Questions by CIA officers over which tactics could be used on the detainees had spurned written the torture memo, which is reflected in the language of the memo. Quote, "You have asked for the advice in the course of conducting interrogations of Abu Zubaydah," end quote. The memo's author, John Yoo, acknowledged the memo authorized the enhanced interrogation techniques used by the CIA in Zubaydah's interrogation. However, Yoo told an interviewer in 2007 there was an urgency to decide so that valuable intelligence could be acquired from Zubaydah before further attacks could occur. However, nothing Zubaydah said was important or important enough to where further attacks could be stopped. The number of interrogation techniques were enormous. The amount of torture exacted on people like Abu Zubaydah, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Ramzi bin al-Shib, Mustafa al-Snawi, Abdul Aziz al-Aziz, and the others at Guantanamo Bay who are being held for their alleged part in the attacks of September 11th. But it wouldn't have happened without the rendition program. Following the attacks of September 11th, the CIA once again not only did engage in torture of detainees at CIA-run black sites, but also rendition programs. These rendition programs were authorized by the State Department. Extraordinary rendition is state-sponsored forcible abduction in another jurisdiction and transfer to a third state. The phase usually refers to the United States-led program of extraordinary rendition during the War on Terror, which had the purpose of circumventing the source's country's laws on interrogation, detention, extradition, and torture. Extraordinary rendition is a type of extraterritorial abduction, but not all extraterritorial abductions include transfer to a third country. The administration under Bush rendered hundreds of illegal combatants for U.S. detention and transported detainees to U.S.-controlled sites as part of an extensive interrogation program that included torture. Extraordinary rendition continued under the Obama administration, with targets being interrogated and subsequently taken to the United States for trial. A 2018 report by the Intelligence and Security Committee of Parliament found the United Kingdom, specifically the MI5 and MI6, the intelligence agencies, to be complicit in many of the renditions done by the United States and has helped fund them, supplying them with intelligence and knowingly allowing them to happen. In July of 2014, the European Court of Human Rights condemned the government of Poland for participating in CIA rendition, ordering Poland to pay restitution to men who have been abducted, taken to a CIA black site in Poland, and tortured. In a 2009 ABC report entitled Two CIA Black Sites Prisons in Lithuania, quote, the Lithuanian government has concluded that the CIA operated a secret black site in Lithuania for high-level Al-Qaeda detainees, and that a second secret CIA facility was established in the heart of the capital city of Vilnius. The government began an investigation after an exclusive ABC News report that the CIA operated a secret black site prison for terror suspects in the Baltic country in 2004 and in 2005. In a report released that Tuesday, the National Security Committee of the Lithuanian Parliament recommended that intelligence officials be criminally investigated for their role in establishing the prisons. In addition to the prison outside Vilnius that was located and revealed by ABC News, the report says that Lithuanian intelligence made a guest house in downtown Vilnius available for CIA use as early as 2002, though they could not prove that it had been used. In November, an exclusive ABC News report revealed that the CIA had built one of its secret black site prisons inside an exclusive riding academy outside Vilnius, Lithuania, where affluent Lithuanians once rode show horses and sipped coffee at a cafe. The CIA installed a concrete structure where it could use harsh tactics to interrogate up to 8 suspected Al-Qaeda terrorists at a time. John Sipton, a human rights researcher, said the activities in that prison were illegal. They included various forms of torture, including sleep deprivation, forced standing, and painful stress positions. Lithuania agreed to allow the CIA prison after Bush visited the country in 2002 and even pledged support for Lithuania's efforts to join NATO. Lithuania was one of 3 European countries, along with Poland and Romania, where the CIA secretly interrogated and suspected high-value Al-Qaeda terrorists. The new members of NATO were so grateful for the United States' role in getting them into that organization that they would do anything the U.S. asked for during that period, said White House counterterrorism czar Richard Clarke. They were eager to please and eager to be cooperative on security and on intelligence matters. But that wasn't all. In a BBC News report dated February of 2007, entitled EU endorses damning report on the CIA. Quote, the United Kingdom, Germany, and Italy were among 14 states which allowed the United States to forcibly remove terror suspects, lawmakers said. The European Parliament voted to accept a resolution condemning member states which accepted or ignored the practice. The European Union report said the CIA had operated 1,245 flights, some taking suspects to states where they could use and face torture. The report was adopted by a large majority, with 382 MEPs voting in favor, with 256 against and 74 abstaining. The final version denounced the lack of cooperation of many European Union member states, and it condemns the actions of secret services and governments who accepted and concealed renditions. It is unlikely, the report says, that European governments were unaware of rendition activities on their territory, something the British government had denied. The Parliament also called for an independent inquiry to be considered and for the closure of U.S. Guantanamo Bay detention camp. Human rights campaign group Amnesty International welcomed the European lawmakers' vote, but urged member states to carry out independent investigations. Although the report had no force in European law, Mr. Fava said during the parliamentary debate that the relative investigation over a year had uncovered much new evidence. It said there was a strong possibility that this intelligence had been passed on to European Union governments who were aware of how it was obtained. It also uncovered the use of secret detention facilities used as the flights made their journey across Europe towards countries such as Afghanistan. It was not possible to contradict evidence or suggestions that the secret detention centers were operated in Poland and Romania, the report said, end quote. But when did the rendition program start? Many people would revert to the Bush administration. However, this would be false. In regards to renditions, according to the American Civil Liberties Union, it alleged that extraordinary rendition was developed during the Clinton administration. CIA officials in the mid-1990s were trying to track down and dismantle militant Islamic organizations in the Middle East, particularly Al-Qaeda. According to Clinton administration official and head of the National Counterterrorism Center and National Coordinator for Security Infrastructure Protection and Counterterrorism, Richard Clark, quote, extraordinary renditions were operations to apprehend terrorists abroad, usually without the knowledge of, and almost always without public acknowledgement of the host government. The first time I proposed a snatch in 1993, the White House counsel, Lloyd Cutler, demanded a meeting with the president to explain how it violated international law. Clinton had seemed to be siding with Cutler until Al Gore belatedly joined the meeting, having just flown overnight from South Africa. Clinton recapped the arguments on both sides for Gore. Lloyd says, Dick says that, Lloyd says this. Gore laughed and said, that's a no-brainer. Of course, it's a violation of international law. That's why it's a covert action. The guy is a terrorist. Go grab his ass, end quote. However, both the Reagan and Clinton cases involved apprehending known terrorists abroad by covert means if necessary. However, the Bush administration expanded the policy after the 9/11 attacks. In fact, it broke every law possible. In a New Yorker interview with CIA veteran and former head of ALEC Station, the Bin Laden Issue Station, Michael Scheuer, and author of the rendition program under the Clinton administration, writer Jane Meyer of the New Yorker noted, quote, in 1995, American agents proposed a rendition program to Egypt, making clear that it had the resources to track, capture, and transport terror suspects globally, including access to a small fleet of aircraft. Egypt embraced the idea. What was clever was that some of the senior people in Al-Qaeda were Egyptian, Scheuer said. It served American purposes to get people arrested and Egyptian purposes to get these people back where they could be interrogated. Technically, U.S. law requires the CIA to seek assurances from foreign governments that rendered suspects won't be tortured. Scheuer told me that this was done, but he was not sure if any documents confirming the arrangement were signed, end quote. Later, Scheuer testified in 2007 before Congress that no such assurances were received. He acknowledged that treatment of prisoners may not have been up to U.S. standards. Quote, this is a matter of no concern, as the rendition program's goal was to protect America. The rendered fighters delivered to Middle Eastern governments are now either dead or in places from which they cannot harm America. Mission accomplished, as the saying goes, end quote. However, the argument is whether the people that they detained were threats to the government at all. But we'll never know that, will we? Because the people that they captured, whether they were telling the truth or not, can't be used. Their admissions can't be used in a court of law. Why? Because of the use of enhanced interrogation techniques. Torture. In a CIA paper called Background Paper on CIA's Combined Use of Interrogation Techniques, the paper provided further background information and details on high-value detainees, or HVD, interrogation techniques to support documents CIA has previously provided the Department of Justice. This document talked about rendition, in which it described rendition as this. A, the HVD is flown to a black site. A medical examination is conducted prior to the flight. During the flight, the detainee is securely shackled and is deprived of sight and sound through the use of blindfolds, earmuffs, and hoods. There is no interaction with the HVD during this rendition movement except for periodic, discrete assessments by the onboard medical officer. 2, upon arrival at the destination airfield, the HVD is moved to the black site under the same conditions and using appropriate security procedures. 3, reception at black site. The HVD is subjected to administrative procedures and medical assessment upon arrival at the black site. The HVD finds himself in the complete control of the Americans. The procedures he is subjected to are precise, quiet, and almost clinical, and no one is mistreating him to this point. While each HVD is different, the rendition and reception process generally creates significant apprehension in the HVD because of the enormity and suddenness of the change in environment, the uncertainty about what will happen next, and the potential dread an HVD might have regarding U.S. custody. Reception procedures include the HVD's head and face are shaved. A series of photographs are taken of the HVD while nude to document the physical condition of the HVD upon arrival. A psychologist interviews the HVD to assess his mental state. The psychologist also determines if there are any contraindications to the use of interrogation techniques. The paper went on to also describe interrogation. Descriptive purposes, these techniques can be separated into 3 categories: conditioning techniques, corrective techniques, and coercive techniques. To more completely describe the 3 categories of techniques and their efforts and effects, we begin with a summary of the detention conditions that are used in all CIA HVD facilities and that may be a factor in interrogations. Existing detention conditions. Detention conditions are not interrogation techniques, but they have an impact on the detainee undergoing interrogation. Specifically, the HVD will be exposed to white noise, loud sounds, not to exceed 79 decibels, and constant light during portions of the interrogation process. These conditions provide additional operational security. White noise, loud sounds, mask conversations of staff members, and deny the HVD any auditory clues about his surroundings and deter and disrupt the HVD's potential efforts to communicate with other detainees. Constant light provides an improvised environment for black site security, medical, psychological, and interrogation staff to monitor the HVD. Conditioning techniques. The HVD is typically reduced to a baseline dependent state using the 3 interrogation techniques discussed below in combination. Establishing this baseline state is important to demonstrate to the HVD that he has no control over basic human needs. The baseline state also creates in the detainee a mindset in which he learns to perceive and value his personal welfare, comfort, and immediate needs more than the information he is protecting. The use of these conditioning techniques do not generally bring immediate results. Rather, it is the cumulative effect of these techniques used over time and in combination with other interrogation techniques and intelligence exploitation methods, which achieve interrogation objectives. These conditioning techniques require little to no physical interaction between the detainee and the interrogator. The specific conditioning interrogation techniques are nudity, sleep deprivation, and dietary manipulation. Corrective techniques. Techniques that require physical interaction between the interrogator and detainee are used principally to correct, startle, or to achieve another enabling objective with the detainee. These techniques, the insult slap, abdominal slap, facial hold, and attention grasp, are not used simultaneously, but are often used interchangeably during an individual interrogation session. These techniques generally are used while the detainee is subjected to the conditioning techniques outlined above. Coercive techniques. Certain interrogation techniques place the detainee in more physical and psychological stress and therefore are considered more effective tools in persuading a resistant HVD to participate with CIA interrogators. These techniques used are walling, water dousing, stress positions, wall standing, and cramped confinement are typically not used in combination, although some combined use is possible. For example, in HVD in stress positions or wall standing can be water doused at the same time. Other combinations of these techniques may be used while the detainee is being subjected to the conditioning techniques discussed above. The use of these techniques happened at every single CIA black site. And there were many. The suspected sites were in Asia, the Middle East, Africa, the Indian Ocean, Europe, and other mobile sites. The mobile sites, which were the U.S. warship USS Bataan, the N221SG Learjet 35, the N44982 Gulfstream 5, the N8068V Gulfstream 5, and the N4476S Boeing business jet, which were all mobile CIA airliners in which renditions and torture were made possible. The media outrage regarding the CIA rendition and torture methods came out over the years. For example, the Washington Post on December 26, 2002 reported about a secret CIA prison in one corner of Bagram Air Force Base consisting of metal shipping containers. A report by the human rights organization in 2004, Human Rights Watch, entitled Enduring Freedom, Abuses by U.S. Forces in Afghanistan, stated that the CIA had operated in Afghanistan since September of 2001, maintaining a large facility in the Ariana Chowak neighborhood of Kabul and a detention and interrogation facility at Bagram Air Force Base. In the February 26th and March 4, 2005 edition of Ireland's Village magazine, an article entitled Abductions via Shannon claimed that Dublin and Shannon airports in Ireland were used by the CIA to abduct suspects in the war on terror. The article went on to state that a Boeing 737 was routed through Shannon and Dublin airports on 14 occasions from January 1st, 2003 to the end of 2004. This is according to the flight log of aircraft obtained by Washington, D.C. by the Village. Destinations included Estonia, Lamaka, Saleh, Kabul, Palma, Baghdad, and other cities. According to the article, the same aircraft landed in Guantanamo Bay on September 23rd, 2003, having traveled from Kabul to Szymany in Poland. A story by reporter Dana Priest from the Washington Post in 2005 reported that the CIA had been hiding and interrogating some of its most important alleged Al-Qaeda operatives at a Soviet-era compound in Eastern Europe, according to U.S. and foreign officials familiar with the arrangement. According to current and former intelligence officials and diplomats, there is a network of foreign prisons that includes or has included sites in several European democracies, Thailand, Afghanistan, and a small portion of the Guantanamo Bay prison in Cuba. This network has been labeled by Amnesty International as the Gulag Archipelago, in a clear reference to the novel of the same name by Russian writer and activist Alexander Solzhenitsyn. The reporting of the secret prisons was heavily criticized by members and former members of the Bush administration. However, Dana Priest stated that no one in the administration requested that the Washington Post do not print the story. Rather, they asked they not publish the names of the countries in which the prisons are located. On November 8, 2005, the human rights group Amnesty International provided the first comprehensive testimony for former inmates of the CIA black sites. The report, which documented the cases of 3 Yemeni nationals, was the first to describe the conditions in black site detention in detail. In a subsequent report in April of 2006, Amnesty International used flight records and other information to locate the black site in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. And in August 13, 2007, in a New Yorker article written by Jane Meyer of the New Yorker, reported that the CIA has operated black site secret prisons by the direct presidential order of George W. Bush shortly after 9/11, and that extreme psychological interrogation measures based at least partially on the Vietnam-era Phoenix program were used on detainees. These included sensory deprivation, sleep deprivation, keeping prisoners naked indefinitely, and photographing them naked to degrade and humiliate them, and forcibly administering drugs by suppositories to further break down their dignity. According to the Mayer report, CIA officers have taken out professional liability insurance, fearing that they could be criminally prosecuted if what they had already done became public knowledge. There were a number of investigations. One was the February 5th, 2007 Portuguese General Prosecutor Candida Almeida, the head of the Central Investigation and Penal Actual Development, announced an investigation of torture on inhumane and cruel treatment prompted by allegations of illegal activities and serious human rights violations. A 2012 Poland investigation headed by the Prosecutor General's office initiated an investigation proceedings against the former Polish intelligence chief, which is charged with facilitating the alleged CIA detention operation in Poland, where foreign suspects may have been tortured in the context in the war on terror. However, many people that have been subjected, victimized, brutalized, and even currently being victim to the inhumane methods, past methods by the CIA are currently housed in Guantanamo Bay. How many people have suffered? How many people were injured mentally and physically at the hands of the CIA? How is it that members of the Bush administration, the Obama administration, both from the Democratic and Republican parties, those within the State Department, how many have been held liable for their egregious human rights violations? On April 19, 2006, the Department of Defense released a list with 558 names in what appears to be a fax or scanned image. That's how many detainees were at Guantanamo Bay. The number of detainees now is 39. However, there were more. On May 15, 2006, the Department of Defense released what they called a complete list of former and current inmates. The total, 759. The detention, rendition, and torture programs enacted by these people should never be forgotten, nor should it be forgiven.